Okay, everybody, we're going to try to do this quick and dirty. Give you a quick ed puzzle on Socratic seminars and how they're going to look in this class. So there are going to be two parts because the recording system I'm using will not let me play a video within the recording. The audio gets all messed up. So um, we'll talk about it when we get there. But okay, let's get started here. Socratic seminars. So in the text box, tell me, what is a Socratic seminar? What is its purpose? And what does one look like? All right, so to answer that question, hopefully yours said something along the lines of what I'm about to tell you. Socratic seminar is more about the process of questioning than about finding concrete answers. Philosophy rarely ends in for sure answers. In fact, all the Socratic dialogues, which Socratic seminars are named after Socrates, all the Socratic dialogues written by Plato with the main character Socrates never ended, well, not never, rarely ended with any kind of like clear answer. It was just, it made it clear to the people discussing these major topics, made them a little clearer, got closer, realized what we didn't know, right? Or the characters realized what they didn't know. But this is really about asking questions and trying to figure out on our own what we think or believe. And it's okay to not end in answers. It's about asking questions. And you have to come to class prepared with questions to try to figure out at least a little bit more. Maybe not definitive, because in art, is there a definitive answer and that's it? No, right? But for you, you're trying to find out what you think and what you see and what you feel from these stories, okay? And big questions, as I said, rarely have definitive answers. Like if I ask you the question, what's the meaning of life? There's a joke answer, 42. If you get it, you get it. But that's something that can change constantly and is subjective to each person's experience, right? And together, what we hope to do is try to find the best possible answer for the time being, okay? And so it's named after Socrates because he was famous for asking people questions and getting them to kind of try to explain what they believe, and then he continued to ask questions and continue to ask questions, and that's what we're going to be doing, okay, until the bell rings. So it's a process of thinking deeply through inquiry, right? And it's an attempt to mimic the great Socrates, okay? And so it begins with an open-ended question, okay? And so sometimes I'll start off with a question, but then you guys are going to be responsible for coming up with the rest of the questions. And it's supposed to be a natural conversation. You're not supposed to be raising hands. It should be a polite, organic conversation. You take turns. Okay, now not everybody on every Socratic seminar will be having a speaking role, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But it's for others to share their ideas and for us to actively be listening and really want to hear what they have to say. You need to be using text details or evidence depending on the topic. When we're talking about literature, you gotta be referring to evidence from the text and examples in the text to support your working thoughts on possible answers. Okay. So, as I said, it begins with an open-ended question, which means you shouldn't be asking yes/no questions. You can have a question that has a yes/no as long as there's some kind of controversy in it, right? But generally, you don't want these closed yes/no questions because those are conversation enders, right? If your parents, after the end of the day ask, "Did you have a good day?" and you say, "Uh-huh," and then that's it, right? But if someone asks you, what was the favorite thing that you learned today? Now we're a conversation starter where you're kind of naming it and you're explaining it, and your parents might ask follow-up questions. We want stuff like that. Okay, not conversation enders, but beginners. And you want to make questions that you can imagine someone having more than one answer to. It needs to be arguable, right? Otherwise, it's just something you could point to in the book. That's not really what this is for, okay? And again, without raising hands, okay, you want to be able to support, the answers to those with textual details. And so We need to know the difference between open and closed questions besides just yes, no being usually closed questions. We want to make sure we're able to create open-ended questions both in our ARNs and then on the spot, okay? Or revising our ARNs when we get ready for our seminars so that we have these conversation starters. So look at this one. Is this open or closed? When did Romeo and Juliet take place? That's a closed question. Okay. That's something I could just look up. If you can Google it, that is not a closed question, probably, right? Those are just questions of fact, low level thinking, right? We want to go deeper than that. So there's another one. In Act 2 of Romeo and Juliet, what did the friar mean by the line, "These violent delights have violent ends"? Is that a very closed question, or can you imagine someone thinking, this is a controversial question. There might be different ideas on this. Yeah, that's an open one. Okay. Notice how it's not just something you could look up. This is an opinion or, a subjective interpretation, right? There's multiple interpretations I'm going to have in that. Okay. So now that I've shown you a couple, in the text box, tell me, how would you characterize Tybalt? No, don't answer that question, but tell me, is that an open or closed question? Tell me how you know why. Okay, this is open, right? Because notice there's lots of ways to characterize them. Okay, there's wrong answers, but there's lots of right answers, right? Through the indirect characterization of Tybalt by how he acts, the things he says, right? You might say, he's clearly a hot-headed guy, but you could also say he passionately loves Juliet and he's just defending, her honor. And more than that. Okay, how about this one? What does Benvolio's name mean? Is that an open or closed question? Tell me in the text box and explain why. All right, hopefully you realize this is closed. This is something you could just Google. Ben means good, right? And it means like goodwill, I believe, something about he's a good guy. His name kind of is what he is. He's a well-wisher. He's got good intentions. I think it means something like that. You can look it up and remind me. I haven't taught Romeo and Juliet in a while, and I just kind of fell out of my head. But I know bene means good, right? Like beneficial. All right, so I am going to show you guys an example. And normally if I did this in class, every year is kind of different. I would have played a little bit of this for you to kind of show you what a Socratic seminar looks like on the solo level. But I'm going to have to make this a separate ed puzzle and just show you a little snippet of that on its own. Okay, so I will show you how it looks, it starts off with a question, and the students continue to use evidence and ask further questions to add to the conversation and try to continue the conversation and try to figure out what they at least think. So we'll get there when we get there. All right. So there's 3 different kinds we're going to do this year. First, we're going to start off easy with triad Socratic seminars. Okay. And that means you're going to be in groups of 3 with 1 pilot and 2 co-pilots. So it's going to be maybe at most 12 people talking in the inner circle. And they're going to ask those thought-provoking questions. So as for the team to get all the points, your pilot has to ask a thought-provoking, open-ended question. Okay. It's got to be a good one. And you need to refer to the text directly. The pilot does. And they need to respond thoughtfully to somebody else's question or add to the conversation. It could be a piggybacking on someone else's comment. Okay. As long as you're adding to the conversation. Whereas the 2 co-pilots in the back, you have to take copious notes, to show that you're listening and to help with the possible essay that could follow. Okay, so we're going to practice this with the story girl before we move on to the last story for the short story unit. But you're going to practice taking notes. Okay, so that the person that's speaking has those notes too. So you want to share it with them, but then you have them also because it might be able to help with your paper, and it shows that you're listening. Okay, and also you should be helping the pilot come up with the question. Or questions. Okay, so you are helping at the beginning too. All right, you're going to have this kind of meeting at the beginning where you're going to share your questions you had from your ARNs and getting ready and filling out your Socratic seminar form, which I'm going to show you in a sec. And so they do help you like plan too and get ready if you turn out to be the pilot. Okay, then we're going to move on to duets. Okay, where it's the same thing, but it's just 2 people. So it's going to be at the most 18 pilots talking. Okay. And again, the pilot's going to have to ask a thought provoking question, refer to the text directly, and respond thoughtfully to somebody else's question or add on to their, the conversation. Co pilot, same thing, taking copious notes for your partner and yourself and to show you're listening. Because remember, it's about listening, not just talking. And then we're going to, at the end, be solo. And that's just, it's all on you. And when we do those, we're going to take multiple days to be able for everyone to be able to take a turn. Or we'll do like 20 minutes, 20 minutes. So there'll be an inner circle swap. So, and that'll be towards the end of the year once we get more comfortable with each other and build confidence. Okay. So again, there only is pilots on these. And so it's going to be, you have to ask a thought provoking question, refer to the text directly, respond thoughtfully. Right. And so I just got to remember what Voltaire says, judge a man by his questions rather than his answers. Right. We want to make sure we come prepared with really good questions that we do care about answering and that could add to a good conversation. Because remember, conversation's only as good as the company. So make sure you're good company by being ready to go. Okay. So let me show you what the Socratic Seminar worksheet looks like to get ready. And then you're going to do a second really short ed puzzle just to watch a snippet of the Socratic Seminar. Okay. So you want to be prepared to share out answers to the following questions here. What types of questions are on the worksheet? What kinds of answers and annotations am I expecting from your team's co-pilots? What might be the purpose of this worksheet being completed? Why is it not a waste of your time? Okay, so hopefully you can answer that for yourself at the end of this. So let me show you what it looks like. So this is part of the prepare. So from your ARNs, you're just going to copy down a couple of questions that you've already written and put them here. And you get a point for doing that. And you got to make sure to put the text associated with the question and the page number. So if it's, a huge chunk, you might want to just have the first few words, ... last few words, and put the page number. If it's something short, you'd write the quote there. Okay. And you only put the core part, right? Okay. So you get a point each for that. So it's 4 points for that. And that you need to have ready before the seminar begins. Okay. Then you need to do this before of the initial questions, right underneath the questions and the quotes. Right. So for the first one we're going to do on a story called Girl, my initial question that I want you to be thinking about just to get your brain started that I am going to start the seminar on, okay, is this question. How does Kincaid use either verbal, situational, dramatic irony in her story Girl to highlight the contradictions within the mother's advice and societal expectations? Now, this is not going to make sense to you now. It will later. And so before our seminar, you're going to write your initial thoughts. Okay, so what was on the other slide and this before part all has to be done at the beginning of the seminar. Then we'll have the seminar, and then for homework, you're going to reflect. You're going to write about, did you learn anything new from this question? Or, did your mind change about anything related to this? Or you could add, what did others think about the topic? Okay, so it could be about either how you changed or about ideas that were different than yours that you heard. So you want to write about that here. Okay, and that's a point. Okay, and that again shows that you were thinking whether you're pilot or co-pilot. Then in the back, you're going to reflect on how well you and your team did. Okay, you're going to grade yourself A, B, C, or not applicable. This is not going to affect your grade. This is for you, for yourself, to be able to go, okay, I was doing this, but I need to work on that next time. So it's just a way for you to kind of check for yourself. How are you doing and how could you do better? And there's these categories here about how, did you do everything you needed to read and prepare for the seminar? How about listening during the seminar? How about speaking during the seminar? How about interacting with others during the seminar? So, if you're a co-pilot, you might put NA in all of the ones right here in the end, okay? And then lastly, you're going to have reflection questions about what do you feel is an important contribution you made in the discussion today, you or your team, okay? Don't just write something vague like, I heard a good question about symbolism. Okay, no, say, I heard a great point, or you could say something like, when the pilot said blah, 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 you're going to be specific about what your pilot said. I want to give details so that I can tell and you can tell what the heck you thought was so interesting, okay? And then you're going to also talk about, another member in the discussion today. Like name somebody else in the Socratic seminar, maybe not in your team, but another member of the class that you heard something really great that you want to give kudos to. And you're like, yeah, I like what they had to say. So the first one's about you or your team. The second one's about another member of your team or the class as a whole. Okay. Just kind of depends on how the day goes. All right. And again, that's just showing you're listening, and it helps you remember, oh yeah, that was something good. And maybe you could use it in your essay later. All right. So hopefully, it's giving you a little insight into how this is going to work. We're going to have some practices, and you're going to get great at this so that when you move on to your AP Lang class next year, or when you move on to college or any other class that has seminars, you're going to be a master at this. All right. So go on to the next tiny ed puzzle just to kind of look at an example so you've at least seen what it kind of looks like, how it's going to look with us. All right.